Welcome to the Open Design Guide reading session number. I'm going to have to look that up. We are in session 5 and we talk about chapter 4. Thank you all for joining. Smaller group today. Ariel's on listen mode. So we can talk trash about her. Theoretically, but we're not going to do that. That'd be rude. So let's take a look at where we are right now. So we're recording, we don't need personal intros, just website changes. I want to, exactly. I have a PR here up with revisions of chapter 2 based on the reading session, which addresses some things, but not others. I'll just quickly show this one. For example, there was a chapter that was just like listing out all the problems with open source, which is a bit of a downer. And then right further down, there was one with best practices. We kind of combined those two and said, like, here are the unique dynamics of open source in this regard, and these are the best practices that come out of it, right? Instead of like just bombarding you with problems and then like not really making the connection to things. The success stories are still not great. It's like we have 3 pages or so that list elementary OS, Firefox, and WordPress, and it's just not. So that's a separate project. I think we need to like examples, case studies, individual stories of designers. That should be a separate thing. Tightened up the conclusion, expanded in the best practices a little bit, with like a few things a little bit from my experience and things that I've seen and heard. And then something else that has come up with. So in here, you might see like little, you might see something like C2 here or C3, this little bubble. So we have a lot of cross-referencing where like on the first page or on the second page, you might see something that gets really covered in detail on page 7 or chapter 7, right? And if it's just a link, then you don't really know. So I came up with this little style, and C3 just means covered in chapter 3. C2 means covered in chapter 2. So we have these unique links to other chapters that are really small. We can put them in more places because they're small, that allow us to more effectively cross-reference. So like on a certain page where we don't want to go into, like, we just want to briefly mention something, but we don't want to go deeply into it, we can just add this little pill, and then people will know, okay, this will be covered in chapter 3. That should help with the cross-reference. And it's a unique visual style. So regular links to other websites, they look like regular links, but chapter links look a little bit different. So that would be cool to get your feedback on as well. And then otherwise, I'm going to share the note-taking document as usual. And then I think we should jump right into the reading session. So I'm going to try to take notes here again, just made it editable, not edible. And then the chapter we're talking about is collaborative workflows, and I have lots of thoughts on it. But how about we just read and see where things take us?
Let's do it.
Would you like to kick us off?
All right,
You
sure.
don't have to. But
Open Design Guide, Chapter 4, Collaborative Workflows. Version control basics. As a designer venturing into the world of open source, one of the first concepts you'll need to grasp is version control. At its core, version control is a system that records changes to files over time, allowing you to recall specific versions later on. Later is fine. This capability is crucial in collaborative environments where multiple people work on the same project simultaneously. The primary benefit of version control for designers is the ability to track the evolution of design assets. Imagine working on a complex user interface and realizing that a previous iteration was actually better. With version control, you can easily revert to that earlier version without losing your recent work. This provides a safety net for experimental changes, encouraging creativity without the fear of irreversible mistakes. Can I give some feedback here? Yeah, or should I just continue like reading throughout?
as you please, as you want.
So this assumes that designers use for like a version control system is the same as a developer. Like typically what do? We hardly even like create new files. That is some kind of like big branch that we end up making, right? When you have like like final web design dot final final, those kind of things, right? Um so, but like you just like add another artboard on the same like file or add new pages and stuff like that. I feel like the tools that we have now, yeah, that's why like our artboards are so messy and stuff. You have multiple versions of all things, all components and stuff like laid out right there. Developers, on the other hand, they need all their files to be kind of like in sync because they're interacting with one another, right? In a design, it's kind of like I'm just designing this one screen or this like individual flow, and I can have the other stuff around it. I don't have to detach it and stuff like that as much. So I feel that's not necessarily like the way to touch on version control for designers. I think Errol had uh their hand up.
Hi, I hope you can hear me okay.
Yep.
So I agree. Yeah, I think the way that the example is written in the guide is sort of halfway between like a designer's typical experience and a developer experience. And what you described, John's, is more like how maybe commonly designers will experience version control by like at a certain point you like duplicate your canvas because you're like, oh, I don't want to lose that version, but I want to develop something a little bit more. So, like, I feel like maybe trying to come up with an example which is more like duplicating canvases or saving. Like, I like that it referenced like the whole, Photoshop file, number one, final, number two, final, final sort of culture. But yeah, I feel like the example could be more designer leaning.
Johns, you're muted.
I said agreed with Ariel. Hopefully I'm saying that correct. All right, I'll continue. Version control systems operate around a few key concepts. The repository is essentially the project folder, containing all files and their complete history. When you make changes and want to record them, you create a commit. Think of a commit as a snapshot of your project at a specific point in time. To work on new features or experiment with new ideas without affecting the main project, you can create a branch. Branches allow parallel versions of the repository to exist simultaneously. When you're ready to incorporate changes from one branch to another, you perform a merge. Okay. Working with Git and GitHub.
May I actually also interject something
Sure.
here as for the end of this paragraph? I mean, I totally agree. I had the same reaction too. And so I did an experiment when I went back to Claude and I said, Claude, please rewrite this chapter and make it less about Git and GitHub and make it more about the different phases of a design process. Because,
Hmm.
John's, that a lot of stuff starts in a Google Doc, or you had like this Markdown editor, and like, and then like, I was trying to push it in that direction, and then it came up with this rewrite where it talks about the phases and it breaks down, okay, in ideation and conceptualization, this is how you can collaborate. It talks about
Hmm.
you use forums, mailing lists, chat platforms, do community brainstorming, you put stuff in issues, which are basically like to-dos. Then in planning and documentation, you use maybe wikis, roadmaps, design briefs. Then during design exploration, the collaboration moves to open design files,
Okay.
prototype stuff. During implementation integration, then you move to code repositories, pull requests, continuous integration.
Okay.
And then in testing refinement, you move to beta testing, bug tracking, user research. During release and ongoing improvement, you move to feature request version. So it's more comprehensive rather than just the Git thing. So that could be a zoomed out view, but I wasn't sure if I should actually propose that, because that's like basically means like, let's ditch this page.
Yeah, well,
Respectfully.
like as soon as I finished this last paragraph there, and I saw the next title, working with Git and GitHub, I'm like, oh, this is a Git and GitHub page. Like, what's the goal? Like, what's the goal for this page? It's about Git and GitHub.
Yeah.
So I think the solution that you mentioned there makes a lot of sense. Whether it's like, like if you're in the planning phase, if you're in the planning phase, then maybe you're using like some note-taking application. Consider a collaborative one where other people can comment and blah blah blah, like Google Docs, like etc., versus having to pass around like documents on your computer. So like I think there's, again, as you said, value in like taking a step back and actually going to the nitty-gritty instead of jumping into the tool straight away. And Ariel said, I would describe branches as a thing I've done in design teams where every design has the same original file and adds their name to the file to be their branch effectively. Yeah. So yeah.
Another thought that I had was actually starting not with a solution, but with a problem. So the problem is, okay, so we have this project, which like there's one version of this that everyone's going to use, but we want everyone in the world to be able to propose changes to it, like to come up with changes, suggest changes, and propose changes. And then there needs to be like some agreement somehow that like something that where the original, the main file gets updated, right? So if you just shoot that as your design goal, your jobs to be done or whatever you want to call it, then what do you come up with? What type of system works for that? Okay, and then you say this and this and this and this and this. Then you can derive a lot of things from that, and then you could, I don't know. So starting first with a problem statement is what you're actually trying to do, and then with the moving towards the solution.
Uh, and the whole ethos, I guess. Perhaps I didn't read the previous chapters to have the
Hmm.
context, but I was gonna say like the ethos of like how to think about like picking your tools and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, there's another chapter coming up about design tools. In the previous one, we talked about open source and the role of the designer.
Mm. I
Um,
mean, GitHub is very important, obviously, in this collaborative workflow when you're collaborating with developers and whatnot. But I don't know, maybe there's some open design communities that are not GitHub based, Maybe there's not much technical things in the back. Maybe it's just I don't know, poster design, graphic design for old films or something. A little community pops up like that.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, like GitHub is just one of the tools, and GitLab as well. Yes, the open source version actually.
yeah, true.
All right, so reading club done then.
I don't know. Maybe we could briefly. So maybe we can a little bit more quickly. Like I think the next paragraph, I can just briefly click through it, and maybe we don't discuss it for too long if you feel like it's not worth it.
Perhaps what
There's
we
some
could
good stuff on this page still further down, I think.
Yeah, perhaps what we could do is change the context of like what the goal for this page is. It's not talking about the collaborative workflows in general. Perhaps, I guess we'll have to read a bit more, but perhaps it's focused on the GitHub version control side of things, which is one of the tools on like a subchapter, basically.
So I think, yeah, I think if we want to keep this page, I would make it a sub page.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
call it working with Git and GitHub or something like that.
And
then
GitLab and Bitbucket.
yeah, exactly. And then making the main page, keeping the title collaborative workflows, but moving a lot of this content out into. But maybe there are probably some really good videos about how to use GitHub and all of stuff. I'm not sure if we need to reinvent the wheel there.
Very true. But I'll continue reading and we'll see what else this page has to offer.
Okay. Awesome.
Working with Git and GitHub. Git is Git is the most widely used version control system in open source projects. And GitHub is a popular platform that provides hosting for Git repositories along with additional collaboration features. As a designer, you don't need to be a Git expert, but understanding basic commands and workflows will greatly enhance your ability to contribute effectively. To start working on a project, you'll typically begin by cloning the repository to your local machine. This creates a copy of the project on your computer. As you work on your designs, you'll stage your changes using the git add command, preparing them to be committed. Way too detailed. When you're ready to record those changes, you'll use git commit, which saves your work as a new version in the repository history. To share your work with others or update the remote repository on GitHub, you use git push. Conversely, to get the latest changes from the remote repository, you'll use git pull. These commands form the foundations of your interaction with Git. GitHub provides a user-friendly interface for many Git operations and adds features that facilitate collaboration. Issues allow you to track bugs, feature requests, and tasks. When you're ready to propose changes to the main project, you'll create a pull request. This opens your change for review by other contributors before they're merged into the main branch. I think that was way too detailed.
Yeah, I think it's helpful. I think it's part of it is, I think it's well written. It's like, oh, it's this thing, you put all the stuff there, but then the commands, it's like, I don't use those. I just use the GitHub desktop app. Why would I use anything else? Or the website. So yeah, I think the part is okay, but yeah, it should be more like a subsection somewhere that is specifically about code version control stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So this one might be interesting, more generic though, that could surface up to the main collaborative workflow. Effective communication with developers and other contributors. Successful collaboration in open source projects relies heavily on effective communication. As a designer, you'll often find yourself working closely with developers and other contributors who may not share your design background. To bridge this gap, it's the amount of times this term is used. It's helpful to familiarize yourself with basic programming concepts and project-specific terminology. Don't hesitate to ask for clarification when you encounter unfamiliar terms. Most open source communities are happy to help newcomers learn. And I mean, like personally, I think like a designer who's coming new into a project, them actually documenting these things is quite useful, and it lends itself to the collaborative workflow. If these Git commands are crunchy, yeah, I see that. Also assumes terminal commands. Yes, it does. It's helpful, but it feels like a foreign language. There you go. Errol, go ahead.
So I agree that this section is useful for a particular kind of like designer user that's going to find, different pathways and everything. But I remember one of the things that came out of the designer diary studies research we did was that most designers want to have a conversation with the project team, they want to have a conversation with one of the people that's involved with the open source before they even interact with Git version control and things like that. So I don't think that this is the section for that, but I feel like a reference to the chapter where it's like, remember, you can start by having a conversation with the open source project maintainers first if this is scary.
Yeah, perhaps in an earlier chapter, or would you suggest it on the same chapter?
So I think in an earlier chapter, it talked about ways to start getting involved. And all I think is needed in this chapter is a reference back to that chapter to be remember in this previous chapter, we said it's okay to start with a conversation. You don't have to be a Git expert. or even a Git novice. You don't even have to go anywhere near Git if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's chapter 3, getting started. Yep. Okay. All right, where was I here? Chapter 4, resolving. I forgot where it was. Yeah, when presenting your design. Am I muted again? Actually, okay,
No, I can hear
okay.
you. But by the way, you don't have to read everything. We can take turns too, if
Mm,
you'd like,
Okay, go ahead. Go
unless you
ahead.
want to.
I mean, yeah, don't mind.
Um,
I'll finish off this one, and then
okay.
you guys can do the others. When presenting your design decisions, clarity is key. Provide context for your choices, explaining not just what you've designed, but why. Whenever possible, support your decisions with data and user research. Visual aids such as wireframes and mockups can be incredibly helpful in illustrating your ideas, especially when dealing with complex interactions or layouts. Various collaborative tools can facilitate communication between designers and developers. The design handoff tools like Zeppelin can help you share design specs and assets. Prototyping tools such as Penpot allow you to create interactive mockups that demonstrate how your designs will function. Collaborative whiteboards like Miro and Mural can be excellent for brainstorming sessions and discussing ideas visually. I see someone doesn't like Figma.
I did smuggle Penpot in there in a few places.
I like it.
Yeah. Any thoughts on that last part? I mean, I think it's nice that there's a mention of other tools for different purposes, supporting your decisions and all that.
Um, uh, Ariel says the start of this section is amazing and loves the tools mentioned and would like to speak.
Maybe I'll explain why I like the beginning of this section. It's because over the many years, well, over the some years I've been doing open source design community things, like when we get requests for the jobs or like contributions to the jobs page at Open Source Design, like so rarely will open source projects like think that design includes user research. It's more common now than it was like 6-7 years ago, but like explicitly saying that user research is a thing that can be contributed is like so important here for like both designers and open source projects. So it's really good to see.
And I guess that's also an opportunity to link out to uh the user research kit.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to link out to tons of tools and examples and resources without overloading everything. Let me see. Look my notes real quick. See if I had any other thoughts on this one. Nope, I did not. Something that others in previous calls would mention, like this is a little bit of wall of text. Maybe we can highlight, bold some keywords or so it's a little bit easier to top level scan. But I will then read handling feedback and iterations. The receiving and incorporating feedback is a crucial part of the open source design process. Approach feedback with an open mind, remembering that the goal is to create the best possible product for users. If you receive vague or confusing comments, don't hesitate to ask for clarification. It is important not to take criticism personally. Instead, focus on how you can use the feedback to improve the project. When iterating on your designs based on feedback, address comments systematically. Document the changes you make and the rationale behind them. This documentation helps other contributors understand your thought process and can be valuable for future reference. Sometimes you may receive conflicting feedback from different contributors. In these situations, it's helpful to facilitate discussions to reach a consensus. Use data and user testing results to support your decisions when possible. If conflicts persist, don't hesitate to seek input from project maintainers who can provide direction aligned with the project's overall goals. Sounds pretty good to me. I mean, just like with some other things, I feel like all of this could really benefit from some examples. Maybe we could link out to some designer posted somewhere, and then we can just say, like, read through the conversation down here, and maybe they did a really good job at resolving this to some type of solution. It is nice to see the role of project maintainer in there, as because I don't feel like this was previously mentioned, but I think it's important in this collaborative workflow thing that there are people who make the final call on things, and understanding what their roles and responsibilities are is important. That they don't just merge things that they like, ideally, right? But they try to look for the community. They try to observe if everyone has found consensus, then they will merge it. It's like a neutral, ideally, activity. But just kind of rambling on about this one. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is pretty good.
LGTM.
Yeah. Should I continue? Okay, I will. Okay, resolving conflicts. In collaborative environments, conflicts are bound to arise. These can be technical, such as git merge conflicts when multiple people have changed the same file, or they can be differences of opinion on design directions. For technical conflicts, it's helpful to learn how to resolve git merge conflicts. This often involves manually editing files to reconcile different changes. Clear communication with others working on the same files can help prevent these conflicts or resolve them more easily when they do occur. Design conflicts require a different approach. Use design critiques as an opportunity to discuss different approaches openly. Sometimes creating multiple options and seeking community feedback can help reach a consensus. Always strive to align decisions with the project's goals and user needs. In any conflict situations, it's crucial to communicate respectfully and professionally. Follow the project's code of conduct, and if necessary, seek mediation from project maintainers. That sounds a little bit similar to the previous one, especially the way it ends up. I could imagine there being a reference to, it would be helpful if the project has design principles and guidelines that can be referred to. Could be a style guide, could be component, could be other things. I also think conflicts are much less likely to happen if there's a clear announcement of what kind of work you're trying to do and what you're not trying to work to do. And also if the work is split down into small bits. Instead of saying like, oh, we're going to do this huge thing, say, okay, we're just going to focus on this narrow thing. And in this narrow thing, we propose these changes because of these reasons. Can be tricky with redesigns or rebrands or other things, but maybe there are some more specific tips we can throw in there. Not just resolving, but avoiding conflicts in a way, right? Ideally, you do the best so they don't even show up in the first place. Do you have any thoughts? Please go ahead.
I think, last meeting I was referring back to that Coursera course on from Linux and open source. I think there's like a whole section in that course where they talk about avoiding conflict in open source. So it might be worth kind of specifically finding that to see what is recommended there, just so that whatever we write is kind of like matches with the developer or the typical developer experience, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a good reference. I think I did look at that course, and I think it's only 70 minutes or so. It's not like 20 hours. So I think
No, it's super short. Yeah.
Pretty manageable to get through, which I haven't done yet, of course. But we'll get there. Something that I think I also missed a little bit on this page is that page of a champion, like taking ownership of something and pushing it all the way through, which seems to be very, very essential to keep things going and that person also having some, basically taking some authority to set the pace a little bit, and maybe deciding when others don't want to decide, or pushing for a decision when there's a stalemate or things have gone stale a bit. I'm not sure exactly how to put that in, and I'm not sure if it's related exactly to conflicts. But I feel like that's such an important thing to understand too. And I think we talked about in previous call that designers should not feel like they're always on the receiving side, right? They can instigate and push things through. And I think everyone can be generally a little bit more bold in collaborative workflows. I feel like people are a little bit nice. Okay. John's all good with this one? Hitomi, any thoughts on this one? Or should we move on to the next?
I'm super excited to hear about continuous integration for designers.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Continuous integration and continuous deployment are practices commonly used in software development to automatically test and deploy changes. As a designer, understanding those concepts can help you integrate your work more seamlessly into the development process. In a CI/CD pipeline, your design changes could trigger automated checks for style guide compliance, visual regression testing to ensure new changes haven't unintentionally altered existing designs, or accessibility testing. These automated processes can catch inconsistencies early and ensure that design changes don't inadvertently break functionality. By participating in these processes, you can help streamline the journey from design to production, ensuring that your carefully crafted user experiences are implemented as intended. I will say this is just so technical designer focused, like someone who designs stuff and also commits it and updates the code and all of this stuff. I think for people new to open design, for broadening up this whole concept, I think it's just way too deep. I think it's good to understand. For in the Bitcoin Core app, for example, the devs set it up so as they work on pull requests, some online process kicks off, and we automatically can download, an Android build or desktop build, and that is super great for designers. It avoids them from downloading and setting up local work environments, all this stuff. It's good to know that this stuff exists because it's not expected. So the knowledge of that is good, that designers can ask for it in order to participate more closely in the testing process. Yeah, so I think there's place for it in the framework of, the later part of the process. Japanese conversation happening. I'm also trying to learn Japanese via Duolingo, and it's some tough stuff. I think I recognize some characters there. Okay. Anyways, any other thoughts on this continuous integration? Johns, you said you were super excited to hear about it. Are you still super excited to fulfill your expectations?
I mean, it did deliver, right? It delivered exactly. I think, yeah, like maybe this continuous integration thing could even be like rephrased into like, as you were mentioning about the automatic builds, about the QA process and stuff like this, versus the deep technical part about like what CI/CD is. I don't think that has a lot of bearing for the designer.
Yeah, for the very technical person,
Yeah.
I think it is. Okay, Ariel, please.
Yeah, it took me longer than I care to admit to like even lightly understand CI/CD, and I think that if we mention it, then it's likely to get like searched by the designers, and I imagine that those search results are going to be quite intimidating. So it might be worth us spending. I'll see if I can spend some time finding like a designer-friendly CI/CD like link that we can specifically link out to, so that folks don't like get the onslaught of CI/CD hot takes from developers in the Google searches.
Yeah, I think it could be just called automatic preview or something like that. And if you're paying attention, I am actually looking in this page here in my background about one of these automated previews. I pushed some code in my pull request here on the Open Design Guide. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see that the Netlify bot automatically kicked in. So I sent my changes to GitHub, say, hey, I have some changes here. The Netlify bot said, cool, I'm going to build this page for you and give you a link where you can preview your changes. And you even get a QR code here that you can scan, and then you can preview the changes on your phone, right? So if I click that, then these changes that I proposed that other people need to review and I agree upon, and then they hopefully get merged, or I might have to update. Like everyone else can easily click the link and see those changes without having to download the code and all this stuff. So, I mean, it's like an auto preview. Maybe we should just call it something more obvious.
Yeah. I'm even thinking that like even these things are so project specific, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, I don't know if like it's practical to like document all these potential things like well, if it's a web-based project that you're working on, then maybe there's a preview link, but if it's like then there's this other kind, then like how do they manage the builds and all those kind of things. I think that's where like the project itself and the maintainer or wherever has to kind of like like it has to be pushed on to them. And perhaps the collaborative workflow part is more of the principles, the values, the thinking to get you to the step where you can ask those questions
Yeah.
versus even, explaining about, okay, maybe like the basics of Git is fine to, and then still link you out to like some other material. But yeah, definitely not all the commands and stuff, and definitely not these build preview stuff as well, because it's just so dependent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is helpful for designers to know that there's a way that they can preview things without having to run all the code and everything. All right, so I think that's good to know and maybe to ask for it. But yeah, it is further down the process. And of course, if you make a small change to something that only an experienced user will do once they've used your application for 10 weeks and there's some specific use case, then it's not as simple as some words on a website they can just directly go to and see the change. Other words on a website.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, more top level is
Yeah.
your point.
Hmm.
Makes sense. All right. We've already drew our own conclusions here to this page, but let's read through the conclusion anyways. So mastering collaborative workflows is a journey, not a destination. As you contribute to open source projects, you'll continuously refine your skills in version control, communication, and iterative design. Embrace the collective creativity and expertise of the open source community. It's an incredible opportunity to learn, grow, and create impactful designs that can benefit users worldwide. Remember, every expert was once a beginner. Don't be afraid to ask questions, make mistakes, and learn from them. Your unique perspective as a designer is valuable to open source projects, and by mastering these collaborative workflows, you will be well equipped to make meaningful contributions that enhance user experiences for countless people. Again, like this is with the other conclusions on previous pages, we've seen a tendency to be a bit generic and try to be a little bit motivational, but not really say that much in the end. And there's not really a clear conclusion in I lead into the next chapter. So yeah, not the best conclusion here. I would say I would ditch it, basically readjust the page content and structure, and then write a new conclusion.
I think I came to the same conclusion.
So sorry, Vian, he told me. It seems like we're reading this page here and we just decided to ditch most of it. But I mean, that is part of the process, right? You start with something, you react to it, and sometimes you need to ditch it, and sometimes you need to keep it, and you need to keep parts of it. And then we'll iterate on it and do second, third, fourth round. And at around 100, it'll be okay.
I guess guide writers still have a job at the end, you know? AI is not gonna take it away from us.
Yeah, I mean, as I've mentioned with earlier a little bit, the what it absolutely fails at is finding examples, human examples of some designer and how they experience things, right? Because that's just not, the content doesn't really exist. Or case studies of like how some project went through a design process for something and all the things that happen and showing the before and after. It tends to be a bit wordy. There's a good amount of repetition. Usually I can remove like 20 instances of the word open source from the page because it just throws it in everywhere. We have seen some patterns in the AI content, which could be just a matter of iterating a bit. But I think it's still a good process what we have here. Just come up with
Yeah.
this, revise it, and then I'll go through and try to implement the feedback. And then we have mini projects like illustrations. For the previous page, someone asked for designer's role. There's different types of design contributions: user research, UI design, UX design. That we visualize those somehow. Maybe as good examples. Yeah, more stuff to do.
Nice.
Getting started.
Um,
And then we need to
so
test it with real people, and then we'll see what happens.
so what's the writing process like? Is the writing process like using AI? Again, like you just take those notes that we took today, chuck it inside of uh the prompt with the original text and say, hey, make improvements based on that, or is it like physically writing?
It's both.
Uh,
I'm still testing to see. And by the way, anyone else is invited to contribute to it. It doesn't have to be me, right? You can propose stuff, whatever you want. Totally cool. Totally invited. Would be awesome. So I still try to feel out a little bit what can be done with AI with more specific directions. I did that for the previous PR, but then I still kind of created a few more things and I still took it apart, only took bits and pieces, deleted half of it,
mm,
and then rewrote it to sound a little bit more approachable, to add some
mm,
things that I've noticed or things we've discussed, stuff, the feedback, the notes are really helpful.
gotcha.
It's just, you need that in order to make it better. And I do hope that over time we get more human stories and human touches in this thing. So
For
yeah,
sure.
it's better than nothing. It's a good starting point, right?
For sure,
Like
for
we don't
sure. I
start
mean,
with 0, we start with like
yeah.
50%. And with this iteration, maybe it's at 60. And then,
How long did it take to generate the site and pages, would you think? Because it seemed like it had a pretty quick turnaround time.
so I did this while everyone was on summer break and there was like no one
Nice.
around. It's like, man, I really want to get this going. It took, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days to build the whole thing, generate the content, design the site, build the site, generate the images, but not full
Nice.
time, more on the side thing. But right, that was the idea, to just experiment and
Yeah.
just see, like, what's possible with these tools and
Mm,
what can we do. It's the same stuff that I'm doing with Saving Satoshi with Midjourney.
mm. And the domain name, like we had it from before?
Nope.
No. Oh, it was a new one. It was available.
Yeah, it was available.
Holy shit, nice.
I was like, yeah, let's do it, and it's going to be crappy for a while, but what is it? Crappy is the first step to being good.
Very awesome. Very awesome. Well, congrats, everyone on this, including yourself. Amazing.
You think it's useful?
Yeah,
Would
for
you send
sure. I
people
mean,
there?
yeah, for sure. Like it's kind of obvious. Like now I see it. You know, it's like, oh, duh. Why didn't we have this? You know. So I mean, you remember advancing Bitcoin last year or the year before? We had what does a good design process look like?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember your joke with like Was
Yeah,
it?
oh god. Oh.
You started it
No
out.
one, no one got it. I told my normie friends about it, and they got it. They got
Yeah,
it.
not
Just
the serious technical conference crowd.
a room full of geeks. No one got the joke, but my
Yeah,
normie friends know it.
I just don't know humor. Thanks for joining, V.
Take care of the.
So let's, I mean, I guess we're recording here. What is the next one? Design process, tools and resources, contributing design assets, improving user experience, building a personal brand, advanced topics, and case studies. Yeah, still a good amount of stuff to go through.
Building a personal brand. What's that about?
My personal, well, I mean, you could just well read through it or wait like 5 weeks until we get there.
Oh.
So yeah, some of the writing about your individuals in this thing, like it needs to be a balance between, are you doing this for passion because you want to make cool stuff, you love this topic or whatever, but it's also helpful if someone's trying to move into, get some
Exactly.
payment for it, some compensation or so, or if they just
Yeah.
love talking at conferences also, right? They need to be able to present their stuff well and make a case for what they do, which is sometimes hard for designers to present their work, like designing your own website. It's always the hardest thing in the world. So I think this is I don't know if personal branding is the right title, but I think generally the topic is a good one.
Yeah, agreed. Start your newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. This is a total amazing work. Looking forward to see how this develops.
Yeah, same here. If we continue the weekly schedule, we will be done with the final chapter at December 28th, I think.
Oh, nice. Nobody gets vacation in open source. Do we add that?
Exactly. I'm going to stop
Oh,
recording
nice.
because we're just chatting anyways. So anyone watching here, thanks for tuning in.